My name is Marcela Gomez. I am 28, and this is my testimony. So, I grew up in a Catholic home. My parents were married. I had 3 siblings, and we had a good family. We didn't have everything, but life was good. We lived in a one-bedroom home, and everything was good. And up until my mom started to go to a Christian church, everything started to stir up in my home. Like, things just started to happen, arguments, and I could see how the enemy was working in my home. I see how things were trying to be planted in me as a child. I would deal with lust. Then as we kept on going to church, my mom started to be more involved, coming home late sometimes, and my dad would get angry. He'd be like, "Why are you coming home so late? Why do you take so long? You didn't even leave me dinner." And sometimes when we came home from church late, he would lock us out. I remember this one time, he locked us out, and I tried to get in through the window so I could open the door for us, see if there was any window open. And I come in, and he tells me, "Leave your mom outside and just come in. Leave her out there by herself." And I was like, "Can't do that." And I came back out, and we tried to find another window to go into. And this window had an AC. So my mom was trying to hold it as I would go in the window. And then I see my dad throw the AC at my mom, and her whole leg was bleeding. And we stayed out that night and just stayed at my aunt's. And the next day my mom got baptized. And then after that, everything was just so chaotic in our home. More arguments, fights. I remember even getting in the middle sometimes, getting upset, getting angry, and my dad for screaming at my mom and stuff. And my mom would pray for him, like she cared for his soul, that she would try to bring the pastors to my home to minister to my dad, but my dad would run out the door. And after that, my mom caught my dad cheating, smelled his clothes. He would smell like women's perfume. He as well started coming home late, drinking more. And then one day, he just got up and left. He ended up leaving my mom for another woman. And my mom was a stay-at-home mom, so she hadn't worked. But now she had to maintain me and my 3 brothers. So we had to move, and that was just a big change for me, having to change home, change schools, didn't see my father anymore. And it's so crazy that when all that was happening, I remember having a dream. And in this dream, it's so vivid to me still, I saw a demon come down. I was playing in the backyard, and I just see this demon fly down and take me into darkness. Because after this, my life was just darkness and suffering. I was depressed because I didn't understand what was going on. I was 8 years old at this time. I didn't understand why I didn't see my dad anymore and why we had to move. And my mom wasn't home. She was always working, trying to maintain us. And my brother, my dad, well, I don't know where he was at. And so I became very depressed. And since my mom had to work a lot, there was other people watching us. My grandma, uncles, aunts. And since my dad wasn't in the picture, there was an uncle that I started to be really attached to. See him like a father figure. And I had so much love for him. But he ended up taking advantage and abused of me while he lived with us. And I know by God's grace, I don't remember it, but I know that it happened. I don't remember what he did to me, but I know that he abused me. And after that, I felt like my joy was stolen. And I became very depressed and quiet. I was very quiet in school. The teachers would be concerned, and they put me in counseling because they couldn't, I wasn't a normal child to them. I didn't speak. I didn't want to talk to anybody because I didn't comprehend what really happened. I couldn't understand what was going on. And as I grew up, I would have breakdowns randomly. I'd go out with my family, and I was just very quiet. They were like, "What's wrong with you?" And I wouldn't speak. I would start crying. I became very isolated as a child. But then I grew up, 13 years old. I began to rebel. I feel because I was finally understanding what had happened. And at 13, I went to the club for the first time. Then I started drinking. Then my clothes started being shorter, more revealing. I feel like I was calling out for attention, calling for help, because, I grew up in a home where we didn't really speak of things. I didn't come home and my mom would ask me, how was school, or my dad. This time he was in the picture. He came back, but he was here and there. I was moving back and forth with my mom and dad. I was very unstable, rebelling, and I wouldn't even tell them where I would go, who I went with. I would come after school, I would go with my friends, always out trying to stay distracted. And I know my whole family was talking, what is she doing? She's so young and she's getting drunk at parties. The one thing that I was like, why? Well, I look back now and I was like, nobody ever asked me what was wrong with me, if I'm okay. I was just crying out for help. I wanted that attention, for somebody to see me and tell me, are you okay? But nobody ever did. My family would keep to themselves, bottle everything in. We wouldn't talk about problems. We wouldn't talk about what's going on. They wouldn't sit down and explain what was going on. None of that. We weren't communicative. And then at the age of 15, I decided to lose my virginity to somebody I didn't even love. I was just doing it because the other girls were doing it. And I was the only innocent one in my friend group. And when they talked about sex, I didn't know what they were talking about. Everything I had to learn from other people, And I feel because of the abuse that I went through, I thought that was love. And I felt like a man could only love me for my body. And then I broke up with that guy and I wasn't even hurt. I didn't even care. I just moved on and I went on with the next boyfriend. I was always jumping relationships or trying to stay the longest I could in relationships. Then at the age of 16, my heart was broken because my dad committed suicide. And I was living with him at the time, so I had to move in with my mom. Like I said, I was always back and forth. I couldn't be in one place. Always being everywhere. Didn't want to be home. But after that, I became even more depressed because I was like, I finally have my dad back. I didn't have the best relationship with him, but I finally had him back in my life. More than I used to. And I feel like I was trying to make up for all those years that he wasn't there. And I started to be suicidal at that time. I tried to commit suicide so many times, but something would always happen. My mom would come in time, my brothers would come in time, and I felt like I just didn't want to be here anymore. I struggled, with my self-esteem, at a very young age, I would sleep around. I thought that was love, and in the midst of everything, through those issues, depression, in school, in high school, I was already in high school, 16, and I met this guy who I felt like I could talk to, that the first person, that I told about my abuse, and I felt very attached to him because I was like, finally somebody that understands me, somebody that hears me out, somebody who I can tell everything to. And he was very broken as well and told me things that he had never told anybody, that people didn't know about. So we felt like that was love, but now I know that it was just lust, because as well, that's all we would do, and he would do things that would bring me down. That relationship really brought my self-esteem down. I would always catch him talking to other girls, trying to get with the other girls, and I remember when I was in that relationship, I had cousins who were going to church, because of everything that happened in my life and what was going on and the suffering. I turned away from the church. My mom would still go here and there, but she strayed away from the church as well, with the whole divorce and everything that happened with my dad. I didn't want to do anything with the church. I was angry, I was hurt, but I always believed in God. That's one thing I would say when they ask me, what do you believe in? And I'm like, I believe in God, but I don't have a religion. But my cousins convinced me to go, and I went with this boyfriend that I had. And I just remembering that was the first time that I really experienced the Lord's presence, that I just broke down and I cried and I fell to the ground, and I just know that this had never happened to me before. And the boyfriend that I had at this time, he's like, what's going on? Like, he ran to the altar, trying to catch me, trying to be there for me. And I just remember like really truly experiencing the power of God that day. But because of the sins that I was doing at the time, the soul tie that I had with this person, I went back to just doing the same thing, just going back into drinking, having sex, and at this time I was living the life, but like people that knew me, they thought I was living the life, living my best life as a teen, because I had a boyfriend, I lived alone. At this time, my mom had left us to go live with her boyfriend, so me and my younger brother were living by ourselves in a duplex. My older brothers, they were already older and had a child and doing their own things, so it was just me and him. We had people over, smoking, drinking, so I just went back to doing my own thing. But while I was in this relationship and doing all these things, I still didn't feel happy. Like, I still feel like something was missing. Like, I still had sadistic thoughts. I was like, why am I still depressed? I didn't understand that. And then around when I was 20, 21, this relationship went on for years. Then I found out that he cheated on me. I had seen some texts from his friends and seen that he had slept with another girl from the same school we went to. And that broke me, because I felt like that was the only love that I knew. And I was like, how could he do this to me? I was loyal. This is the longest relationship I have been, and the most loyal, because I had struggled with being loyal. This was my first real relationship. In my past relationships, I was never faithful. So I felt so hurt. And I remember I was trying to go to church. My cousins kept like, come on, let's go to church. He's not good for you, run to God. And they would minister to me. And here I go again, visiting church with them. And this was the second time that I experienced the presence of God. But this time, I remember they had a visitor, a prophet, and they spoke over my life. They were praying for me, and I remember again, I fell to the ground, and they told me, the devil has destroyed your family, and he's been trying to destroy your family. And I just cried because I was like, how do they know what's going on in my life? How do they know that I feel like my life has been destroyed, Because my family wasn't together. They were very dysfunctional, I feel like I had to grow by myself, I had so many anger and against my parents, and they told me things that nobody would have known. And I was like, God is real. Like, I know God is real. But I gave in again into sin, and I went back to that toxic relationship. I felt like I couldn't get away from it, like I couldn't live without him. And I forgave him, and we got back together. And it's like if I just forgot about God. I felt it was that anger that I had, that resentment towards my parents. And I continued with that relationship. And still I was like, I'm not happy. Why am I in the relationship? After I found out he cheated on me, I wasn't the same no more. I feel like I started to be more cold-hearted with him, mistreat him, curse at him. And I felt like I couldn't get out of that relationship. But now I know it was just that soul tie. I felt like I couldn't live without him. And I couldn't break up with him. And I was like, how do I get away from this relationship? And I felt like the only way to get out was to get even. So I ended up doing the same thing that he did to me. And I cheated on him. And we were living together at this moment with my mom. I was 21 at this time, and I had moved in with my mom, with her boyfriend, and he moved in as well, my brother. And so after he found out, I told him myself, I was like, I'm sorry, I'm not happy, and I ended up cheating, and he just left. But even then, I felt like I couldn't let him go, and he couldn't let us go as well, even though it was so toxic. I would call him drunk. He would show up drunk at my house at 3 a.m, knocking on my window, and I was like, why can't I let go of him? I would have dreams of him, and like I felt like I was being tormented. Like, I want to let him go, but I can't. Why can I not let him go? And eventually, it took like the last straw for me to really let go of that relationship. I had to take him bringing his girlfriend to my house and fighting with me and her, disrespecting my family, that I finally let go. I was like, I can't. He's disrespected my mom. They've disrespected my mom, my family. I can't. And after that, I blocked everything. Like, I blocked his number, and I was like, I have to let him go. He's hurting me. He is destroying me. He's destroyed my life. That's how I felt, like that relationship destroyed me. And after that, I just became even more depressed, bitter, because I just turned to alcohol and drugs, and I just felt like I couldn't be happy. And I felt all this pain and suffering that I was bottling in. Almost every weekend I was out drinking, and I felt like I just wanted to be alone, but I couldn't even be alone. I feel like even when I was single, I had somebody there, somebody to text, somebody to call. Like I couldn't be single. And I was always in and out of relationships, even if it just lasted 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. And there was just times, I would come home drunk and I would be like, there has to be more to life than this. Like, what am I doing with my life? Like, I feel like I was that person that nobody could tell me anything. Even my family would be concerned, like, what are you doing? Family had stopped talking to me. My mom would get on to me, like, what are you doing? I remember one time coming home drunk and I see her in her room and praying. Like, although she left church, one thing that my mom never stopped doing was praying. And she would pray for me, for me to change, because I was very disrespectful, especially to her. I had that revenge, that anger. I was very revengeful, very angry, because I felt like the things that happened to me was because of her, because she didn't take care of me. I was abused because of you. You weren't there for me. That's how I felt. I would be very disrespectful to her, and everybody would try to give me advice, and I wouldn't care. I was like, I'm gonna live the way that I want to. I started to do heavier drugs like cocaine, and I remember one night getting overdosed, and I came home drunk, and I hit my mom, and I don't even remember. Most of the times I remember just blacking out, and I wanted to change, and I tried to change by my own. That's one thing that I really tried. I was like, okay, I need to change my life. I need to stop doing this. And I would try, but then I would go back. It was like this addiction that I was in. I was trying to suppress my feelings, my pain with alcohol and drugs. But I would feel even worse at the end. And then at 25, I got in this relationship that really, really broke me. At this time, I had another cousin that joined the faith and started to go to church, and he would invite me. And it's just crazy that when he started to invite me, this guy came along. After this, I had said, I don't want to be in relationships no more. I feel like I have nothing in me left to give. And when I was trying to go to church, this is when this man came in my life. And I just remember going to this church, and this is when I fell in love with the worship. Like, I remember just seeing everybody worship and cry. But then I would go back to this relationship that I had with this man that I had just met. I was willing to leave my whole family, and then I was like, okay, I don't want nothing to do with church. I felt like this was a plan of the enemy to really destroy me. This person was trying to change who I was, make me ambitious, make me somebody who I was not. And in the end, it just ended up breaking me, because I felt like I lost myself. I was willing to give up my life for this person. He was very toxic as well. I remember being with my family, he'd be texting me like back to back, like, where are you at? Or like, when are you coming? He'll get angry at me with hanging out with my cousins, being with my family. Just wanted to have me to himself, and I felt so suffocated. But then I still felt like I couldn't be without him. And then when he left me, I couldn't understand. I was like, I tried everything in this relationship. I was willing to give everything up, give up my life, and do everything this person tells me. And at this time, I was just tired. I was like, I have nothing in me left. I felt heavy. I felt empty. And I was just like, that's it. I'm tired. I'm tired of this life. I'm tired of the life that I'm living. I was ready to leave this world. I had wrote a letter to my family that I'm sorry for everything. I'm sorry for everything that I've done. And that night I was ready to take my life. And I felt like I couldn't. I felt a voice speaking to me, like, it's not your time. And I remember just breaking down, like, God, please take my life. I don't want to be here. I was like, I've tried to change. Why is my life full of suffering? And after that, I had a cousin reach out to me. And she was like, hey, are you okay? And I just remember breaking down. I'm just like, how do you know? I've been going through it. Like, I'm not okay. And we started messaging each other and then stopped. And then a week after that, she invited me to church. And at first I was kind of angry, because I was like, she hit me up to stop hitting me up. We hadn't talked in 4 years, after that toxic long relationship I was in for 6 years. She would always warn me, he's not good for you. And she just got tired of telling me. And she just, went on with her faith. And I got angry with her and stopped talking to her. And she would try to apologize, and I didn't want nothing to do with her. And I was like, how is it that we haven't talked? And now she just wants to talk to me like nothing and invite me to church. And so I didn't reply. But then another week passed by, and she's like, I know the Lord really has something for you. My pastora, first lady, she told me she had you in her heart, to invite you. And I was like, I just thought about it. I was just sitting there in my bed, like, maybe God does have something for me, I remember that night I tried to suicide, and how I called on to him. I was like, maybe he heard me. I was like, maybe he did hear, maybe he's there, he sees my pain. And so I decided, put my pride aside. I was like, okay, God has something for me. And I went to church with her, and I just remember walking in, and I see the pastors, and I'm like, I know them. I was like, when I was younger in high school, the first lady, I used to drink with her, so I was like, she's leading this church. Like, I was very surprised, because she didn't seem the same. Like, she seemed very different. And I just remember when the altar call came, I went up, and the pastor prayed over me, and he told me things that nobody knew, that I only had told like one person. And he spoke of my abuse as a child, and he told me what happened as I was a child. And I'm like, I knew it. I always felt crazy about it, because I couldn't remember if it happened. And I was like, did it happen, did it not? And then he confirmed to me that it did happen, as a child. And I just broke down. I was like, God, how does this man know this? Nobody knows this, like, nobody really knows this about me. And at that moment, I just broke down before the presence of God. And I was like, God, if you're real, take away all my suffering, all my pain, and all my sadness. And I've tried it all, but I want to try you. I want to try to get to know you. And after that day, I just kept coming. I wanted to pursue God. And I gave my life to the Lord. After that, I've been walking with the Lord now 3 years. And, I congregated in that church, which is House of Unity now. And, I'm so grateful and thankful, for my pastors, that they taught me the love of God. They pushed me towards God. And I just want to encourage you, if you're going through anything, any depression, the Lord can take it all. He really changed my life. I am married now. I never believed in marriage before, because of the example I had with my parents, the divorce, and how my dad wasn't faithful. I felt like I was and how I was cheated on as well. I felt like I was always gonna be hurt, but the Lord, healed me. He healed my heart from all the traumas and triggers, and I'm just glad, and I'm so thankful for all the things that God has done in my life, changed my life around. And He finally gave me that peace that I was trying to search for, that peace and calmness and that healing. And, He blessed me with a man of God. I didn't want to get married at first, but the Lord, He was like, it's time, I remember the pastor speaking, you're going to get married sooner than you think. And I was like, what if I don't want it? I felt like I wasn't ready. I was really enjoying my walk with God. I was really focused on Him and trying to grow in my relationship with Him. But then the Lord blessed me, and He's like, I'm going to give you things that you never thought that you were going to have, you thought that were never possible. And I know if He did it for me, that He will do it for you. And that is my testimony. Thank you for watching.